2016 car now has independent rear suspension. To understand why that's important, let's compare the two designs. This has a live axle or solid rear axle. That means if the left wheel hits a pothole, the right wheel is going to be affected as well, which causes it to lose its grip mid-corner. So why would Ford even do this in the first place? Well, there are some inherent benefits to the solid rear axle design. One is it's a lot less expensive. Another is it can take a whole lot of power. That means you can soup the car up, lay down some crazy times on the drag strip without breaking it. And if things do break, it's a lot cheaper to fix. The sixth generation of the Ford Mustang, dubbed the S550, ditches the solid rear axle in favor of independent rear suspension. Now that is a big deal. Like it sounds, that means that each wheel can move independently of one another. Most importantly, that improves ride quality, but it also means the car handles a lot better. We took the new Mustang around the Dearborn test track, and instantly you could feel how much more confidence-inspiring it is around the turns with its new independent rear suspension. Finally, this generation of Mustang is a car that's not just a relatively inexpensive, go fast in a straight line car with a plasticky interior. It actually is really fun to drive in the corners, and it's reliably slidable as well. If you get into little drifts, some oversteer, it's easily predictable, and you can have some fun without annihilating crowds. The interior of the S550 generation Mustang is leaps and bounds ahead of the previous one. Stylistically, it's a lot more beautiful. It's got a double hump design, lovely aluminum trim in the inside. The gauges have a similar shape, but the graphics are vastly improved. One thing I don't really like is that it says ground speed on the speedometer. It's a little bit tacky, but the tachometer actually looks pretty cool with the cross hatching where the red line is. Let's talk engines. We've got the same Coyote V8 from the previous generation, but it is reworked. It's actually quite similar to the engine in the Boss 302. Power is bumped from 420 to 435, and it's got 400 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 happens in 4.5 seconds, which very interestingly is a tiny bit slower than the last generation. This car is a tad bit heavier than that car, so that has something to do with it. You've got two transmission options, the 6-speed automatic, which is equipped here, and a 6-speed Getrag manual. Now, in the previous car, the Getrag was terrible. They say it's been slightly refined. I hope so, because when shifting that car quickly, you could easily lock yourself out of 3rd and 5th gear, which is both embarrassing and just very, very annoying. It's also got a weak point. 5th gear is extremely weak. Someone I know personally had their Boss 302 lose 5th gear recently. It's something that Ford even admits is an issue, but they're not dealing with it. The 6-speed auto is a $1,200 option, something that you probably shouldn't choose. The paddles feel a little bit tacky, they're plastic and bendable, and the response is quite slow, especially compared to the transmission in something like the Dodge Challenger, the Dodge Charger Scat Pack. That 8-speed auto is so much quicker. A problem with the new Mustang GTs is they are far too quiet from the factory. I don't understand. This is a muscle car. Someone who buys the GT and not the EcoBoost is looking for a car that sounds great and performs well. They made it far too muffled. I know that manufacturers are trying to make their cars more refined, more comfortable in the interior, more isolated from the outside, but you still need that rumbling exhaust note to really be a true muscle car. The good news is there are tons of aftermarket options that aren't all that expensive. This car has a Roush exhaust and an X-pipe, and now it sounds unbelievable. Still, from the factory, the previous gen sounds better, but spend a couple dollars on your aftermarket exhaust and it sounds just fine. It's got a very long hood. It's muscular and vented, but even still, you've got a very commanding driving position. Oftentimes, cars with really long hoods, you feel too far back in the vehicle, and it's a bit scary driving it on the road. It does feel pretty easy to position this car in the lane and on the drag strip, as well as on the track. That's a good thing, especially with that independent rear suspension. This car is very, very tossable. Some cool stuff. You've got adjustable steering, 3 different modes. You've got normal, sport, and comfort. That adjusts the difficulty of turning the steering wheel. I really like sport mode, as I prefer something a little bit more difficult to turn, but I love that there's some adjustability there. You've got different driving modes as well: Sport, Sport Plus, and Track. Different traction control settings, as well as suspension and steering and throttle response. Let's leave it in Sport Plus. I'm very impressed with how far the Mustang has come. You look at a 2005 Mustang GT inside, and well, it reminds you of your typical American muscle car. The design is not very nice. It's very vertical, plastic everywhere, cloth seats. But now with the premium package, we've got leather everything. Things are nice to the touch, and even the places that are plastic are done in a fashion that's not overly tacky. Now, a problem with all Mustangs is the leg room in the back. It is a nice option. Obviously, without having the rear seats, you've got nothing more than storage space for groceries. You can put small people in the back, or your children. Perhaps that's a way you can convince your wife that buying one of these is a good decision. Obviously, if you go up to the GT350R, you can remove the rear seats, or they don't come with rear seats at all. But on this car, it is nice to have that little extra usability. The crazy part is it's actually only an inch shorter than the Toyota Camry. That goes to show you how long the hood is, how far situated back you are in the vehicle, to where there's basically no legroom compared to a car that has a decent amount. If I were to get a Mustang GT, it'd be a 2016 with the Performance Package and a manual. The Performance Pack gives you upgraded, larger Brembo brakes, new springs, a larger rear sway bar, a 3.73 final drive ratio, and a host of other goodies. It makes the car perform a lot better. It also comes with Pirelli P0s instead of all-season tires. Well, I really enjoy the new Mustang. Let's see how the old one compares. All right, well, we're in the 5th gen car. Right off the bat, it feels a lot beefier. You feel a little bit higher up. The car feels wider, and everything is a bit sloppier. The steering is heavier, interestingly. Even in the tightest setting on that Mustang, this still feels like it takes a bit more effort. It's also right off the bat a little sloppier. I can tilt the steering wheel, turn it back and forth really quick with no movement in the steering wheel. The hood slopes down quicker, so you actually can see the ground ahead of you more clearly than in the new generation Mustang. It instantly feels, when you get on the gas around turns, like it wants to step out in more of an unpredictable manner than the new car. It feels like it has less mechanical grip because each wheel isn't able to act independently of the other. 0 to 60 in the 2014 Mustang happens in 4.3 to 4.4 seconds. It's a little bit wet on the road, so putting the power down will be interesting, but let's see what this thing can do. Launch it at 1500 RPMs, little wheel hop, little wheel spin, shift into second. Not able to put the power down in the rain whatsoever. That was probably 0 to 60 in about 7 seconds. But fun nonetheless, made some commotion, made a good noise doing it. I am really not a huge fan of the GetTrack transmission. If you shift into 3rd gear too quickly, it locks you out. But it's no question Mustang should come with the manual transmission. This one also has an aftermarket exhaust. Sounds really awesome. Oh, there's nothing like being able to control the gears yourself, though. Interior-wise, like I said, the new gen looks like it's from a different company. Everything here is just vertical, straight down. It's got a similar looking nav screen, although you can obviously get it without. Everything is similar, the design of the instrument cluster, the way the aluminum trim goes, but it's just a class down in this car. Even the leather seats look the same. It just feels like kind of a half-priced car. To me, the 5th generation Mustang both looks more like a muscle car and handles more like a muscle car. It embodies all of the memes that make jokes that muscle cars handle like apartment buildings in a mudslide, that they handle like pontoon boats, that they kill crowds, all of which are true, just kidding. But it doesn't handle as well, it's nowhere near as confidence-inspiring, but that doesn't mean it's not just as fun. In a straight line, this car actually does feel a bit faster than the other car. It feels less refined. Everything rumbles a bit more, it rattles and shakes. And in that way, it's almost better. I don't want this to be a BMW 335i. This isn't a refined German car. This is a raw, driver-focused, cheaper alternative to something like an M3, a C63. And in that way, it shouldn't try to be those cars. And I feel like the new one was trying a little bit too hard. Styling-wise, they're both great-looking cars. They've both got the triple taillights that go one at a time when you turn the turn signals. They both got stylistic elements that hark back to the original Mustangs. The new one is undoubtedly sleeker. This one feels more muscular, more square-shaped, where that is more of a refined, shaven-down feeling to it. I do really see the appeal of Mustangs, though. They're relatively cheap to mod. You can get some decent power benefits, just naturally aspirated with headers, X-pipe, and exhaust. And then you can go the turbo or supercharger route and bump the power up to crazy levels. On this car with a live rear axle, you're less likely to break things. Parts are cheaper, they're more plentiful. There's more research and development done on performance packages for this car because it's been around longer. But if you're looking for something that's more of a daily driver, the new gen is absolutely more comfortable in every way. It gets slightly better fuel economy, it's more isolated, the suspension feels softer over bumps, but at the same time it has much less body roll. That's that independent rear suspension working for you. Improved handling, but also improved ride quality. But if you're looking for the performance bargain, obviously the 2014 is going to be cheaper. There's more aftermarket parts, put down crazy power, put down better times on the drag strip, and it's even a little bit lighter. If I'm gonna pick a winner, it's the new gen Mustang. Not stock though. You've got to do a new gen with the manual transmission, with the performance package, so it has the right tires, the right goodies, and you have to modify the exhaust. Otherwise the car is too quiet, and almost I'd rather take a slightly modified previous gen over a stock new generation car. Either way, you can't really go wrong. Do you want the more refined one that's better handling, or do you want the more crazy, more raw experience in the muscle car of the previous gen Mustang? Well, I hope you enjoyed this review. Like always, please browse our channel and subscribe. Look forward to seeing you next video.